Today's verse of the day, Isaiah chapter 40, verse 31. But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. In your darkest moments of exhaustion and your darkest moments of you being at your all-time high of fatigue and tired, where you feel like you can no longer pursue or move forward, God is there for you to help re-energize you, restore your energy, and help you continue to move forward. When you're overextended in your energy and you've put in all effort into the thing that you're trying to do, God is there for you to help you continue to push forward, continue to move on, so that you can continue to pursue the thing that you're chasing. So don't give up on yourself, and don't give up in those moments where you have used up all your energy, because God is going to come back and replenish that energy and give you more energy to continue to move forward no matter what. With that being said, let's get to the charts. What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another episode of the Market Recaps. So this week was a very short week, as we started out on Tuesday instead of Monday, given that it was a President Day holiday. And so the first trade that we took this week started out with QQQ here. We have loaded up on the 5-minute time frame. Our initial trading idea was bearish, as we saw some weakness come into the market, and we failing that 600 level. Once we filled that 600 level and formed the orb high and low, we then filled the orb low, where I then looked for a re-entry for a possible retest of the orb low, or between this previous week low level and this orb low level, where I then saw a retest here at 905 off the EMAs, that green line there. I took an entry here using that high of that candle as a stop loss, where I then saw a quick move to the downside, taking profits here and then getting stopped after reclaiming back above this level. We did see a little lower after retesting a little bit above the orb low, but at that point I was pretty much done for the day. My focus this week was really just trying to hone my skills on taking one trade per day, because as I said, last week wasn't the best week for me, so I just reset my approach and took a very, very slower approach to the market this week, and just focus on getting quick in and out scalps and looking for really good quality entries. And so that's what we did majority of this week. So with that being said, let's move on to Wednesday and talk about what we took on Wednesday. All right, here we have the Wednesday chart loaded up on the QQQ, ticker symbol QQQ 5-minute time frame. So on Wednesday, we had some strength come into the market as we were holding above the 600 level, breaking back above that level after forming the orb. We broke out into 604, where we then saw a strong push to the upside, going back into the previous resistance level of $608. From there, I looked for a rejection off of this level. We saw a slight rejection come in here at around 920, where I then looked to take a position, seeing that it was holding this resistance level really well after seeing 3 numerous wicks come in back to back to back. And I saw that the volume was slow, and it also just wasn't showing a lot of strength here. So I did take puts after retesting it the 3rd time on this level, where we then saw a little move down to the previous month low, but we held that level, which was also the EMA. So I knew to take profits there, given that we were trailing and holding this EMA. So I did take profits, where we then saw a little bit more upside. Didn't take any more trades. As I said before, we were focused on taking in and out, one trade a day trades, and just taking good quality scalps. And so that was what we did there. It did end up going lower later in the day, but by this time I just stopped focusing on the market. Notice here, you'll see after a certain period of time, whenever the EMA trail works, once you get a flip on the EMA, you can actually take a position to the downside that might work even better for you, because that's what happened here after 12 o'clock. We had a closure below all the EMAs, and once the EMAs failed, we then saw a push lower back down to the previous month low, and then it failed that level, went all the way back down to the orb high of the day. So anytime you get a flip on trend, you want to try to look for entries on those kind of plays as well, because you might miss out on the actual trend for the day, but you can always catch an opportunity if you get a reversal of the trend later in the day. So just be mindful of that in your sessions and in your day trading approach, that even though you missed the initial trend, you can always catch the trend later in the day if you wait long enough and if you're patient enough, because patience pays. With that being said, let's move on to Thursday. All right, here we have the Thursday chart loaded up on the QQQ chart. 5-minute time frame. As you guys see, we had a very choppy day on Thursday, as we were holding a $4 range for the majority of the day between 601 and then all the way up to 605.5. That was our range for the day. And so for me, I was looking for weakness. I didn't really see a lot of strength going into this day, and I didn't really want to take any calls given that we were approaching a level that we were rejecting numerous times over and over again. So I wasn't too confident in calls, and I really wasn't too confident in bears either, or puts, because there just wasn't a lot of movement. So I tried to take a position after seeing a failure here on this orb high, going back below. However, we were going into a very tricky spot. As you guys see, there's 3 lines there, which are the EMA lines. And so once we got the failure back below the orb high, we were going right back into a retest of the EMA. And so that in itself was where I probably should have not taken this trade, but that is exactly where I took this trade, looking for a continuation back to the downside. Just going off of the simple fact that we were rejecting previous day low or previous day high that we had a very hard time getting above. Seeing that we were having a very hard time getting above it the previous day, I was thinking that maybe today it would actually break down and go lower. However, that was not the case. We saw a retest of this EMA, we bounced back up, where I then got stopped out of this position, going back into the highs, where we then came back down again, pretty much going back and forth for about almost an hour to 2 hours. Where we then later in the day finally saw a rejection after retesting that high of the day at 605.8 cents. So we did get the initial failure. My idea was right, but it didn't happen in the time that I wanted it to, and my entry was so late into this position. Had I got into it earlier off of the initial retest of that previous day high, I would have been in a way better spot to hold this position and see a better return. But that was not the case. I was looking for a continuation play. The continuation didn't happen, and you guys see here later in the day, the continuation actually unfolded as you see the retest once we failed below the EMA, similar to what I was talking to you guys about on Wednesday. So you just want to be mindful of your strategy and how each of your processes and the things that you use to get into your strategy work with you and work against you as well. But we took our L on Thursday. It was a very well-managed L. Unfortunate L, but well-managed L nonetheless. And then Friday, we did do really well. So let's talk about what we took on Friday. Hey, what's going on, y'all? I just want to say thank you all for watching. If you guys are new, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Also, turn on the notification bell. And if you guys want to learn more about how to day trade, I have a free day trading course on my website at www.continuebelief.com. There you'll get all the information and resources needed to help you guys learn more on your journey to day trading. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let's get back to it. Finally, you guys, here we have the Friday charts loaded up on the QQQ chart, 5-minute time frame. Friday was a little bit better. We had a little more movement given that we had some news coming out and a lot of data coming out that day. So given the data we had come out, that pushed the market upward. However, we were still in the resistance zones. So I wasn't too bullish, but I did take a call after seeing that we were once again holding the EMAs. Right around 9:15, we had a failure off of the previous day high of 608, going back down to the orb high, where I then saw an opportunity to take this position out there, but a little bit earlier, I mean. So we had initial rejections off of the pre-market highs and the 609 resistance level, but we were still holding the EMAs. So given that we were holding the EMAs, I did see that we were holding those levels. So I went ahead and used that as a stop loss, the low of this candle here, where we then saw a push back higher, back above the orb high, reclaiming that orb high and pushing back above the pre-market high. I took profits initially at the top of this candle, getting out of this position where we then was a good idea at the time because we saw a little bit of another retest where I could have got another re-entry to another push back higher. But I was then focused on trying to find possible puts in the market. So I ended up taking 2 trades this day because I felt that this value was a little better and there was a lot more movement given that we were having a wider range of price action. And so I was looking for a retest closer to the second level of resistance, which is that 611 level. We got as close as we could to it. Initially, we retested at 610.35, where we saw a rejection back down to the pre-market high. However, once we bounced off that pre-market high, I looked for a possible opportunity once again if we were to get closer to 611. instead of getting close to 611, we simply had another rejection come in after reaching back up to 610.1. I saw the reversal come in, and at 11 o'clock, I got my position using the high of day as a stop loss. And this was the perfect position. I was personally just looking for a simple reversal back down below the 608 level. However, we flushed that level and went all the way down back below the orb high, but we held this level of 604 that we were holding pretty much the whole day. Even at the beginning of the day, you guys see here, there's numerous wicks off of this level, and we held there. So once we got to 604, we had a sharp reversal back up to the highs, and we ended up getting stopped out of this position, but we took majority of our profits after filling 608, so we made a good return on this trade. And I was pretty happy with my execution on this day. So overall, we had a really good week, and I was very happy with the turnaround that we had this week, given that we had such a bad week last week. This week was very much of a well-executed week and just a very well-approached week. And I had very good conviction, very good patience, very good execution, and just very good trade management. So I'm very happy with my execution this week, and I hope to continue it next week. So we'll see what that entails. But with that being said, let's move on to SPY and talk about what we could possibly see going into the market next week. All right, you guys, so here we have SPY chart loaded up on the 4-hour time frame. As you guys see, we had a range between 675 and 690. So what are the levels to watch going into next week? The levels to watch going into next week are going to be very interesting. Depending upon where we open, I think we might have a gap down going into Monday, because Trump announced that he's raising tariffs on the economy, the global economy. And so anytime Trump has raised tariffs in the past, that typically gives a negative reaction to the market. So the market has a negative response to Trump's tariff increases. And so with him announcing that he's imposing tariffs on the global economy, we might see a gap down in the market going into Monday. If we do see a gap down, we could see as low, possibly as low as 675. And if we see even lower than 675, we are in a bearish market. We can possibly see some very aggressive selling come in down to these lower levels of 670 to 660. I have a level marked off for demand at 650. However, depending upon how aggressive the selling is, we could see lower. If, however, the market doesn't have negative response to this imposed tariff that Trump has announced, and we hold these levels here that we're currently at, if we can get back above 690, we can see a push back to highs of 696. And if we break 696, we can see even higher. So the levels to watch as of right now, going into what we're seeing on the chart currently, are going to be 690 and 680. If we can hold above 680, we can see a retest of 690. And if we can break above 690, we can see higher. However, if we fell below 680, we can see lower going down to 676. And if we fell 676, we can see lower going down to 670. But like I said, we want to be mindful of those imposed tariffs going into the beginning of this week and see how the market's responding to said news. And given how the market responds to that, that will kind of determine what the market does from there. If we're below 670, we will see lower. And if we're still holding above it, we could possibly see higher. And if we open where we're currently at around 690, we can see higher as well if we get a reclaim of 690. So these will be your levels to watch going into next week. Make sure you guys trade safe. It's a Trump season, so you know there's gonna be some very volatile movement in the market. So make sure you guys are trading safe. Use your risk management. Trade wisely. Be patient with your trades. Execute your trades diligently and as best to your ability as possible. And you know, like I said, when you're exhausted, don't lose sight of your goals. Keep God aligned and centered in your chase, and you will overcome every obstacle you face. That's a bar. But with that being said, you guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Make sure to tune in to Rich Out Gains podcast tomorrow at 7 o'clock, and I will see you guys in the next one.